All right, it's not every day that we get the blessing of being here with the Nile River as a backdrop, just slightly behind us, still rush hour traffic in Cairo. And of course, on the eve of his departure, Duane Dell'oca, a full moon just above his head. Talk about true blessings as well. He's had a successful tournament as far as the 2019 Africa Cup of Nations is concerned, was in charge of the international feed commentary in all of the games that he took charge of. A successful one, did you say, Duane?
Robert, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I felt it was really positive. I thought the tournament was good. There was a lot to work with. There were a couple of moments and a couple of periods of play but you have that with every tournament,
sure,
where it's a little dull, and certainly with the earlier kickoffs when you're kicking off a match and it's 39 degrees Celsius, it's difficult for the players to play at that high tempo intensity. But other than that, I felt it was a really good tournament, and I hope that it was a really good tournament for people who were listening to my commentary.
Now, when you talk about feedback, it gets better in so many ways, though, because of all the years that I've known Duane Dell'oca, is that he puts that extra effort. If he doesn't know something, he'll go and ask. And when you get people in Nigeria, people in Algeria, people across the African continent sending you messages and saying, Duane, we are very impressed with the way you have been able to pronounce certain names. I mean, how does that sit with you? Because that's almost like job well done. You've been able to put in that extra work. Or do you see it as extra work?
I don't really see it as extra work. I see it as respecting people. I have a fairly difficult surname for a lot of people to pronounce, a lot of people to spell, a lot of people to get right. And it bothers me when people don't get it right or don't make the effort to get it right. And that's one of the things that I was taught from a very early age, is if you want to respect somebody, show them your respect, you get their names right and you remember their name. And to be able to tap into that in an environment like commentary, where saying a player's name is so critically important to the output, I think is one of those key factors in me having a modicum of success in what I do as a commentator. It certainly is one of the many aspects I do focus on, but it's something that's very deliberate, and it's, for me, a sign of respect for the players.
A lot of commentators find individual players' surnames difficult. I mean, while talking about that, which player or players did you find particularly difficult to pronounce?
That's a difficult question, because I'm not sure I found too many difficult to pronounce.
Yeah,
it's if they have a French background, it's with a French name. If it's with an Arabic team, it's with an Arabic pronunciation.
Right.
Which is why this debate about Hakim Ziyech, Zip, all the different pronunciations, but it's Hakim Ziyech, where the Arabic transliteration into English is somewhere between an E and an A sound, which is why he will play with an A on his jersey for Morocco and an E on his jersey for Ajax Amsterdam, for example.
Yeah.
But to be able to know that the pronunciation of his name is Hakim Ziyech is important to me, and important that my audience gets to understand that and know that as well. But difficult names, no. I do dread doing a Poland versus Sri Lanka game one day. I do dread that.
And we all know why. And we're not going to venture into trying a couple of those names. We've been there before. Coming back to the tournament, it's been one where we have Algeria. That has been seen to be a lot of people's favorite when it comes to on-field play. They've had a coach now who maybe next to many, who's a local coach again. We're going to hail that again. We're going to final with two local coaches. Yeah. Maybe let's start off with that, Duane. How significant is that aspect of the final?
Well, I think one of the things that people are saying about Jamel Belmadi, the Algerian coach, is that he wasn't born in Africa. But Jamel Belmadi's parents are Algerian. Jamel Belmadi might have been born in France, but he is 100% Algerian. He's so Algerian that he was made captain of Algeria when they played at the 2004 Africa Cup of Nations. He is Algerian. He's not French. He might be French born, but he's Algerian. So for those who are saying that he's not Algerian, I think that's wrong to critique. He's lived and breathed Algeria. He's waited for his chance. He only gained success in Qatar, but what he's doing with Algeria has been superb. And the way that he's transformed the team's mentality and performances and results in the space of 8 or 9 months has been nothing short of captivating. And Aliou Cisse, who has been given a few chances on the opposite side, I mean, the fact that you got two young coaches who captained their nations. I mean, everybody remembers Cisse captaining Senegal at the 2002 FIFA World Cup, obviously, but the fact that he also captained Senegal at the 2004 Africa Cup of Nations, you got the two captains from their respective nations at 2004, 15 years on, taking their sides to historic finals. For Algeria, the first in 29 years. For Senegal, only their second ever, with a chance to win their first ever title. I mean, it's remarkable storyline, but so many layers for coaches who also had a lot of similarities. Never quite achieved the club success they would have liked. Had good international careers without necessarily being superstars, but have the opportunity as coaches to lock their names into history. Look, Cisse, of course, captaining Senegal in 2002 is locked into history. But maybe any sense that they didn't achieve something as a player could be fulfilled by winning the title. And I think that's tremendous.
That's a sign of motivation again. And when you look at the run into the final and what it took, for example, for an Algeria to get to where they are, playing against Cote d'Ivoire, pushing them into extra time, pushing them to a penalty shootout as well. The raw emotion that we saw from the players told a story of a nation that really wants this. What will be the telling point come the day on Friday in the evening when we all line up at the Cairo International Stadium to see who will be the biggest differentiator between the two nations? What will win it for either of these two nations?
Well, I think you've got to look at a couple of factors. One of them is the coaches, obviously, and we've discussed that. Okay, so the coaches' side, I think the fact that they've got players with strong mentalities is key. And I think that is going to be ultimately down to it, because it's not about how much training you put in now. It's not about the talent individually. It's about the talent coming together as a cohesive unit. To be fair on the balance of play, I think Algeria have played as the better team, and Senegal have had very bright moments, but not played together as a team necessarily. But I think the other thing you've got to take into consideration is the people that are missing for the final. Yusuf Attal has been one of the standout players for me for Algeria in recent months, and certainly in this tournament at the start. The menacing right back, and he's missing because he broke his collarbone against Cote d'Ivoire. And then you've got Kalidou Koulibaly, the finest defender in Serie A. He's constantly linked with top clubs in England and Spain and never moves, and I can't understand it because he is rock solid. He's nicknamed the Wall for a reason, and unfortunately missing through suspension. I think two key defenders for both these sides might prove to be key for one or the other. But I also want to see that battle between Mane and Mahrez. I know a lot of people are making a lot of fuss between these two players, but I still think the mentality of the aspect, the way they knit as a cohesive unit, and the key players missing for me are going to be the three biggest elements. That said, I think at the moment, if they play the way they played in the semi-finals, I think Algeria is going to walk away with the title.
For Mahrez, how big was that free kick for him, just in terms of catapulting him into the final, but as a player of a certain quality and a certain standard within EPL?
Here's a player who's won 2 Premier League titles in the last 3 seasons. Here's a player who has the full backing of his coach, who gets a phone call from Pep Guardiola, one of the most respected players in all of football, who was a great player, but he's even a better coach. I think most will agree with that. Gets a phone call and says, time to step up, produce it, do the goods. And Riyad Mahrez, who's never scored more than 2 goals in a calendar year for Algeria, scores 3 goals in a tournament, including a free kick 5 minutes into added time to take Algeria to an historic moment. To have the confidence to step up and say, this is mine, in a tournament in which he's been shown that he's not the star player in the tournament, when the coach whipped him off, and has been clear about the fact that this is a team and this is not about individuals in it. The way that he's been able to step up and not throw any ego around, to not make a big fuss about, I'm Riyad Mahrez, who achieved the near impossible with Leicester City and has done the treble with Manchester City coming into this campaign. No, he's played as a key player and a critical component in this Algerian lineup, and I think it's been fantastic to watch, because very seldom have I seen Riyad Mahrez step up for Algeria the way he stepped up for Leicester City, the way he stepped up for Manchester City. At this tournament, we're seeing Riyad Mahrez show all the ability that he's shown in the Premier League and possibly more. That free kick was utterly sensational, and we will note that as being the moment that sort of punctuated the historic moment for Algeria, but the way he performed throughout the tournament, his consistent runs, his control, his first touches, the way he skinned Jamilo Collins, who's been very impressive for me in the semi-finals, down that right flank, whipped in a ball that came, unfortunately, off Collins' shin, off Itebo into the back of the Nigerian net. He created the opening goal, and then he smashed home the free kick. He stamped his authority on the game, and he's done it consistently throughout.
A couple of people asking for Mane to step up equally for the final. We saw him avoid taking the penalty. We have seen previously with the missed penalties from his side. So he kind of knows where he stands. He's provided the goals, he's provided the assists. He's also unfortunately been on the back end of missed opportunities when it comes to open play, rounding off a goalkeeper, having a chance to score, missing penalties. What does he need to do?
Look at it this way. Odion Igalo, leading goal scorer in the tournament with 4 goals so far, right? Sadio Mane's got 3. He's joint second with a handful of players, including Mahrez. But he had 2 goals effectively disallowed against Benin. He missed 2 penalties. He failed to find the back of the net after he had rounded a goalkeeper to an open net. Yes, he was off balance a little. But you expect something magical from a man who can produce magic. Almost at the toss of a coin at times. And this is the thing about Sadio Mane. He could have had 8 goals without even blinking. He hasn't hit top gear yet. And this is somebody, though, who knows how to rise to the occasion. If you tell me Sadio Mane can't rise to the occasion or that he doesn't play well for Senegal, I would say that's false. You saw in qualifying, there was a match against Madagascar where Aliou Cisse perhaps underestimated his opponents, and he started with some of his fringe players, and he left the likes of Moussa Sow, Sadio Mane on the bench. With minutes to go in the game, he had to bring on substitutes, and Sadio Mane came on, stepped up, scored a goal. In the end, 2-2 final score, and it helped Senegal along their way in their progress. But he's that kind of player who, when the pressure is on, can produce, and he's done it time and time again for Liverpool, and he does it for Senegal. He's not always there to score goals, but you look at the number of opportunities he's created, and the players around him are stepping over the ball sometimes, and you're asking questions about the finishing. The individual talent, perhaps not what you would like to see with Senegal necessarily, with all their players combined. But they do have some great players in that team, and Mane is the greatest of that lot. I'm sorry to say, although I still think missing Koulibaly is going to be key. The spine of that team, Koulibaly at the back, Mane up front. I mean, you got a winning combination in those two to build a team around, and that was always the plan.
Are we able to sit here today with the blessings of the full moon and say who lifted the trophy?
You know, there are only 2 countries that have ever played more than 50 matches at an Africa Cup of Nations and not won the title. One is Mali, who played their 50th game at this tournament and lost against Cote d'Ivoire in the round of 16. And the other is Senegal. Now, Senegal will set a record for the longest or period without winning a trophy, or the longest to achieve their first Africa Cup of Nations title, if they go on and win the title come Friday. But to be fair, while my heart is saying I want Senegal to win it for sentimental purposes, I think, and my head is unquestionably saying Algeria will win this. They have been the better team, they've been the more consistent team, and ultimately you score 12 goals and you concede only 2, one of those to a penalty. I think you'd be very unlucky to not win the title.
So Algeria to win it, according to Duane Dell'oca. What's your thought at home? You can always hit us up on social media, MarawaTV, active 24/7 as well. Before I let him go, he's been able to sit back and watch Bafana Bafana play. Bafana Bafana come close. Bafana Bafana get knocked out. They did the deed against Egypt, the host nation. The tournament fell flat because the people now with bought tickets decided, well, our country's gone. We can't go and support. Who are you going to be supporting? And you could tell something was punched out of the air when it came to the tournament. But the tournament has continued unabated though. Bafana Bafana have played the Nigerians. The Nigerians have knocked Bafana Bafana out. They've worn their suits. They've gone back to South Africa. And it's been a call now to find out whether or not Stuart Baxter continues. Where do we find this hope? Where do we find this moving on factor? And maybe just your summary of Bafana Bafana's performance here.
Well, I want to pick up what you say about the coaching casualties first, because I think the fact that we're seeing the likes of Paul Put gone now, that the Ricardo Minetti at Namibia gone, Disaba who's left, not because he was fired, but because he's opted to go and coach a team that's picked him up for a fair whack of money, shall we say, coaching in Egypt because of the incredible performance that Uganda had at this tournament and the success of the side at this tournament and making the knockout stages. But I want to go back to the initial coaching casualty, and that was Javier Aguirre, the man in charge of Egypt, much expected of Egypt on home soil. And indeed, when South Africa produced the goods to knock Egypt out, Aguirre lost his coaching post. Abu Reda, the Egyptian Football Association president, resigned and encouraged the other board members to do the same because of the failure of Egypt. Yes, it has had an impact on the tournament and the number of players, number of the fans that are going to the venue. But it is good to see in the matches, particularly at Cairo International Stadium, the number of football fans who've come out. A lot of Egyptians still had their tickets. They've been wearing Nigeria jerseys. They've been adopting other teams, as South Africa did in the 2010 FIFA World Cup, where everyone was suddenly buying Ghana jerseys when they were on a great run. But that's the point. There has been an element of that in it. But I think that moment when South Africa beat Egypt was one to cherish for South Africa, and I know a lot of people are making light of it, and there have been many who have been celebrating the achievement, and there have been many who have been undermining the performance. I think what you've got to look at is the way the players performed on the day tells you that these players are capable of doing something so much more. And this is what does concern me. I was celebrating that victory because the number of times we saw Sfiso Klanti, for me, was hardly impressive in the group stages. But Mohamed Salah couldn't get past him in that last 16 tie. Sfiso Klanti is capable of producing brilliance. We know it, we've seen it. He was integral in that Bidvest side that went on to win 3 trophies in 18 months. This is a man who can do it, and I'm not picking on Klanti. I am giving him credit for the ability that he's able to achieve and show what he's able to do on a pitch. But it all came together because every person on the team contributed. Mutiba's being slighted because he hasn't scored goals. But in the same way, Bunja of Algeria has been slighted because he hasn't been scoring goals, bar the penalty he slotted against Kenya, and then the penalty that he missed made it worse. Mutiba's work rate can't be just taken for granted. I think he was very impressive in the way that he held play up, looked to combine with players around him. He struggled for supply in the opening matches, and maybe there was an element of lack of motivation potentially in other matches. There was an element of the heat that was punishing for the South African players. There were lots of elements to consider for the South African players going into that tie. But to play the way they did, every single player deserved kudos from that performance, and they were thoroughly deserving of a win because they negated Egypt. They imposed themselves from the start, and they absorbed every moment of pressure that Egypt had and didn't allow them to create other moments that they would have done against just about anybody else. A team that had only lost once in the last 15 years in AFCON matches. You know, and that was in the final in 2017 to Cameroon. 21 wins in 27 AFCON matches in that period, with only 1 defeat, and South Africa comes and manages to produce it in front of the home fans.
80,000 fans, Duane Dell'oca.
With maybe 200 South African fans and maybe 200 neutral fans. I was sitting in the stands because I had a night off and I had an opportunity to sit in the stands, and I could feel what that moment did for me. I was elated, despite the fact that I'm tasked with being a neutral when I'm commentating, and I am a neutral when I'm commentating. I'm there to augment the enjoyment of the football for all people, not in South Africa, not only in Zambia, not only in Nigeria, for the people watching in New Zealand, for the people watching in the United States, because the audiences are that far and wide. But to watch that and experience it, I was a South African in that moment because I wasn't commentating, and it was incredible to feel that sense of emotion. But I could also sense all around me that sheer depletion of the Egyptian fans. When Lorch scored, everybody knew that was game over. The tournament was done. There was no coming back. and that things were going to need to change. And now we're seeing the examinations into what's gone wrong, similar to what's happening in Ghanaian football.
Yeah.
There are examinations into who's to blame, what's to look at. Clarence Seedorf and the whole Cameroon situation as well. Absolutely. A lot of introspection now from the teams. South Africa then, in their next game, pitched up against Nigeria, looked nervous, looked cautious at first, looked nervous as well, couldn't get into their game. In the end, scored a goal that they were perhaps a touch fortunate about, but yes, they were building a little more at that time. And then after having done all the hard work and gotten themselves back into a game in which they were trailing, courtesy of a brilliant Nigeria goal that Chikwueze rounded off, they go and concede in the penultimate minute of the match for failing to defend a set piece, and that's heartbreaking.
All right, final question for the great Duane Dell'oca, international feed commentator here in Egypt for the Africa Cup of Nations 2019. Three-letter word came into existence: VAR. South Africa also broke their virginity when it came to VAR, and it went their way. Also, South Africans. For the first time being used in this tournament, Duane Dell'oca, what do you make of VAR and its success?
Look, Robert, I like to see accuracy.
Yeah.
I think you know me individually, and you know that one of the things that I can't stand is injustice.
Yes.
And I think and we've seen some deliberately bad calls that referees have subsequently been punished for over the years, match-fixing allegations that have been proven to be true. We've also seen some unwittingly bad calls that have led to teams being knocked out, teams being eliminated, histories being rewritten for the wrong reasons.
Right.
We've also seen we've also seen some positives come from some of the decisions that have been made based on human eye perception.
Yeah.
And oftentimes the best referees will come up because they've made the correct calls from the big decisions in particular.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about a throw in on the halfway line going one way or the other. I'm talking about getting it spot on with a penalty or similar type of big call. And I think what we've seen from VAR internationally is larger scale success with a few situations that have proved to be the undoing of VAR's success, as you put it.
Yeah.
Because what you're seeing is a few moments that are being highlighted because of a human error, again, in the control room, or a communication error somewhere, and indeed a system breakdown error, which we saw in the CAF Champions League final, which has led to cases going to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Ultimately, though, I like to think that the human eye would never have been able to give the goal that Bongani Zungu scored against Nigeria as a goal, because to everybody, and I'm sure to you and I included, we thought it was going to be offside because Bongani Zungu was standing in an offside position, and we all thought it had come off his own teammate's head.
Yeah.
The fact that it came off Igalo's back was proven for VAR, and I like the fact that the accuracy was there. The contention comes in, though, because the VAR can only overrule a seriously wrong decision from the referee. And certain aspects of refereeing that are adjudged, like penalty calls and that, are not open to interpretation, but they are subjective. If it's clearly wrong, when no contact has been made whatsoever, for example, or a case of mistaken identity, for example, the VAR can step in and overrule. And I think VAR has upset a lot of people with certain decisions, but it's also been kind to a few other teams around us. It's a very complicated system in terms of being introduced, in the same way that DRS is still being criticised in cricket, for example. Less so in Hawkeye, in tennis, for example. But I think ultimately it's improved the accuracy of the match officials. What we're also being allowed to see is officials are now getting the sense of what they're allowed to do with VAR, and for the most part, we're seeing VAR overrule offsides, not because the assistant referee has showed his flag early on and stopped the play before it's even got to a potential goal, but we've seen the play finish, come to a situation where it's potentially in the back of the net, and then go back and check. And I like that, because if there is an error from an assistant referee, the referee's going to stop play, call for an indirect free kick. We'll never know what happened. But with this opportunity, referee's been told, keep the flag down, even if it's close, if it's tight, unless it's glaring, keep your flag down, let the play finish. We can always go back for it if not. I think to being allowed a little bit of cushion room can be a positive. It's still something that match officials need to settle into as a whole. But ultimately, I think it's something that could prove positive in the future. Is it 100% accurate now? No. Is it going to be 100% accurate in the future? Well, that's the beacon. That's what you want to aim at. I think it's improved the accuracy of calls overall, but there are still a few decisions that have been awful, even with VAR involved. And one of the things that's critical to note as well is they've already recognized certain things don't need to be checked from VAR.
Sure.
So goalkeepers on their lines.
Yeah.
It's been ruled no VAR. We are not going to go to VAR decisions anymore to say a goalkeeper has come off his line by half an inch. If the human eye can't perceive it on the field of play anymore, that's it. And that's fair enough. That's what you want to see. So already we're seeing the common sense element come in, where people who are against VAR and people who are for VAR are finding some sort of common ground, and I'm hoping that that is going to mean it is for the betterment of the game.
Sure. VAR. The big debate. Will give us your thoughts. Duane Dell'oca has locked his thoughts down. I want to thank him so much indeed for being part of MarawaTV and being here in the Africa Cup of Nations. Wealth of knowledge, some fantastic games that he's here to call. Safe flight back, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
And all the
it.
best until your next big assignment, which we will reveal on this show.